You're listening to GWP Live. Today is February 28th, 2026, on a Saturday. I'm your host, Isaac Hedges, joined once again by co host Jacob Bulmer. We are following the breaking news, the latest developments on the recent U.S. Israel joint strike on Iran as it develops. Of course, happened just recently here on February 28th, 2026. Estimated 2:30 a.m. local time in Iran. That's about 5 o'clock p.m. our time. So, Jake, any major takeaways, important developments? What should we know about the recent strike on Iran?
Yes, so we know that it was an operation that took place with U.S. and Israeli forces in the air. We also know that it began yesterday evening in our time, which would have been Saturday morning in Iran. So this was an overnight weekend operation that did take place. And we now know that there will be an emergency meeting with the United Nations later this afternoon at around 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Absolutely, of course, in light of the recent strike happened just very recently, so it's not difficult to see why they would be calling an emergency meeting on that basis, of course, after these recent strikes, which took place just hours ago, of course, again, local time, 2:30 a.m. in Iran, and Jake, you said about 5 o'clock p.m. our local time. Now, the United States is calling this mission Operation Epic Fury, which, of course, we mentioned is a joint mission. Of course, these strikes done jointly with Israel. So, of course, the United States calls the mission Operation Epic Fury. The Israel parallel mission known as Operation Roaring Lion. And, well, again, this is somewhat shocking, probably to many folks out there. Again, just waking up and finding out about this. But again, this long-standing policy of the United States in terms of relating to this, sort of what we're talking about, what would lead to this, and sort of the rationale for it. Well, again, there's reason to believe that Iran has been developing a nuclear weapon. Again, the longstanding policy of the United States on that has been, of course, against that. Of course, Iran oftentimes having adversarial interests or ones that aren't aligned with the United States. And we've got reason to believe in recent times that Iran has nuclear weapons, that they've been developing them against our wishes. And our president has outright asked, he's said to Iran leadership in the past, again, he's attempted to work through this. He said, I want to hear from Iran officials. We're not going to develop a nuclear weapon. And they've refused to say it. And so leading up to this, we've seen more evidence that they are, again, some escalations in the area. So that is, of course, what leads up to this, and sort of the notion there, sort of adjacent to the thought of mutually assured destruction. In other words, we're hoping to sort things out here before things escalate too much, where it causes even more casualties than it already has. Jake, anything else you might add to that?
Yes, we also just want to say that, of course, this is a live stream that we are doing, so it's a very good possibility that there is going to be some technical difficulties, or there always is that possibility. So at this point in time, just kind of bear with us here as we sort out those technical difficulties with the screen currently being totally dark at this point in time for our viewers. Again, we'll try to fix that as quickly as we are able to.
Yes, quite possible. So apologies, folks, for the absence in video feed. Was not aware of that, Jake. So thank you for bringing it to my attention. But hopefully, the folks at home would say, as we usually do, viewers and listeners, but not a whole lot to look at this point. So thank you to our listeners who are still out there. Of course, all of you being listeners, again, for bearing with us through any technical difficulties that we might be having. Again, hopefully you can still hear us. And as we'll talk about in just a few moments as we get to some weather events later here, during this live stream. Again, that may be one of the factors at play interfering with our connection here. Again, is quite possible. Oftentimes with satellite connections, of course, if you could see what we were sharing here, again, you could see our video. You would see that I'm not joined here in the studio by co-host Jacob Ulmer. We are in two totally different locations. Again, he joins us here live by satellite. So, again, unfortunately, that uh, may be interfered with by the weather at this time. So, again, apologies for any technical difficulties on that front. But again, without further ado, many other important things to get to on that front. Of course, we mentioned this just happened moments ago. Operation Epic Fury with the United States, Operation Roaring Lion, and again, um, Operation Roaring Lion being the parallel mission of Israel. And yes, some new information coming in here from Jake. Yes, that's not great. Yes, apparently video is still dark on the viewer end, so very unfortunate to see that. We thank you folks
Um,
all for bearing with this. Jake, yes, what do you have for us?
so it turns out that it was actually an issue on my end of things, and it actually is visible for everybody. So,
All righty.
um,
Well, false alarm, so quite possible in the future. Fortunately, it was only Jake having the technical difficulties, so possibly just a bit of user error. Well, not to worry, my friend. We've all been there, certainly. So good to hear. Hopefully,
well, I've
things are.
got multiple different monitors here, and one
Ah.
of them shows me what our viewers are watching, and so it was totally dark. But it turns out that that monitor was just having some technical issues itself with some connection issues.
Ah, yes.
So that's what
Well,
was causing it to go totally black, even though everybody can actually see what we're looking at.
ah, great. Well, again, certainly, hopefully, that is the case. All of you folks at home
Yep.
can hear us loud and clear, and again, can see a sharp, clear image again as we continue to follow this. So important on that. Thank you all for bearing with us. Though, of course, as we mentioned, this referring to the recent strike on Iran, joint strike coming from the United States and Israel. Of course, the United States with Operation Epic Fury, and again, the parallel mission in Israel, Operation Roaring Lion, that is. This comes, of course, in response to, again, with Iran leadership, recent escalations on that front, and certainly reason to believe that they're developing a nuclear weapon, which, again, certainly could pose a serious threat and be problematic for large parts of the West. So, that being much of the rationale here, and many of those, of course, concerned about this, reasonably so, might ask. And again, about the casualties, again, in these sorts of conflicts, it's very unfortunate. Oftentimes, or for more of those, of course, the only thing in terms of from a security standpoint, of course, we have somewhat of a tyranny, you could say, in Iran in terms of the leadership. So again, that is part of the mission, sort of threats on that front. So casualties beyond that, though, are again, unfortunately, sort of included in the margin for error, sort of included in this type of conflict. So very unfortunate, and we've already seen this again to the latest counts, and this may be changing as we're delivering it live. So, Jake, if you have any recent developments on that, feel free to correct me. But to our latest account, death tolls are about 250, about 750 injuries in the region. And again, one of the tragic things, again, this was totally outside, of course, United States standpoint, what we're trying to target specifically our leadership in Iran and these nuclear sites, these sites at which they're believed to be developing nuclear weapons. Again, nothing beyond that, but unfortunately, that has affected some civilians. There have been some civilian casualties related to that. Again, to our count, we got roughly 85 schoolgirls, sadly, from a school in Iran were killed as a result of this. So, again, certainly the folks in the area, certainly the Iranian citizens that didn't ask for this, could use prayers. So certainly want to keep that in mind going through all of this. Now, that said, of course, the United States still pursuing this against the Iranian leadership and all of that, again, against their efforts to develop nuclear weapons, different things of that nature. But he has put out a statement in attempt to sort of help out these poor Iranian citizens who, again, they didn't ask for this conflict. And again, many of them are in fairly dire danger relating to this. Well, he's put out a statement. He's said to the Iranian citizens, well, like, in your best chance of staying safe and getting out of this is defecting Iranian leadership, again, not collaborating with them and getting out and trying to stay safe. That is to the best of their abilities. Now, what is not abundantly clear at this point is if any of these messages, again, many of you, if you've been watching the coverage on the news, some of this after the strikes, there have been folks on there who will give an address to people in Iran. But at this point, it's not yet clear if those messages are getting through to Iran. In fact, it's quite possible that they are not, in light of course, the damages caused by the recent controversy, and of course, relating to, as we mentioned, their government, with the leadership again being somewhat of a tyranny. It's again quite possible because this mission is against their leadership. Their leadership would have an interest in suppressing any of this information that again would be contrary to their interests. So it is quite possible, again, to the latest counts, there's widespread internet outage in the area. Again, it's roughly 4% of regular levels. So there's a good chance that a lot of this information just is not getting through. So again, an unfortunate amount of casualties on that front, and not a lot of new information beyond that. Jake, is there anything else you might add? And it
Yes, at
appears.
this point in time, we do know that we have some new information as well. Not exactly sure when this has taken place, but it appears that Iran has begun launching retaliatory attacks against Israel.
Yes, yes, I believe.
So we do
Oh,
have a little bit of the. So Iran has now fired waves of missiles and drones targeting Israel, and U.S. bases have also been targeted in the region as well by Iran.
right. Yes, certainly. So already seeing escalations on that front. So this is somewhat serious. And Jake sort of compared this to a recent event a while ago. Like to return to that a little bit because, of course, conflict with the Middle East is not new at all. Certainly, anyone who's been alive more than a few seconds likely has heard about conflict relating to this. Certainly, of course, not long ago we had the conflict which we covered here on GWP News Weekly extensively. Of course, the conflict involving Israel and Hamas. Again, Hamas being closely linked to Iran. So again, other conflicts relating to that. Of course, we saw a strike, of course, from the United States just earlier this year on Iran. Not a whole lot immediate after effect from that. Again, so some might suspect that we would see similar outcomes from this. That again, it's sort of fresh, hot off of the presses at this moment in terms of recent developments. Perhaps some might suspect that this won't last much longer. But again, if you reference again folks with areas of expertise in this military international conflicts such as these, they're suggesting that it might last a little bit longer. Anything you might add, Jake?
Okay, yes, we just had some breaking news that just came in. Let's see, CNN just reported that Iran's supreme leader was killed in the strikes. That was according to Israeli sources.
Okay, so it's now been confirmed Iran's supreme leader taken out during the strikes. Of course, one of the objectives, as we mentioned, of these strikes, of course, in terms of keeping Iran from developing these nuclear weapons, as we've as the United States advised them against doing. Well, their leadership, of course, has been a key point in standing against that, a key obstacle in that. So, again, one of the objectives of the strikes here, and somewhat likely, again, they were fairly targeted with a decent degree of precision on that front. And so it's not terribly surprising. It was sort of already expected because, again, hours after the attacks and again, following them thereafter, we hadn't heard from really any of the leadership in Iran. So there was a good indication either they were afraid, sort of hiding out or something. If they were still around, there was a good chance that at least a couple of them had been taken out. And so it's now been confirmed that the top one, the supreme leader of Iran, has been taken out. Again, quite possible that that's affected other government officials in Iran. Not abundantly clear yet. At this point, we've yet to hear from them, which again indicates that it's likely that they were also taken out or simply that they are in hiding. So we will continue to follow that as new developments on its surface. And that's about the latest on that. Jake, anything else?
Um, yeah, so within the last 30 minutes, we had some new information as well that there was even a picture of his body that was shown to the Israel Prime Minister, as well as many others that were within the Security Council there
Okay.
at Israel. And we also know that an Israeli public broadcaster also found the body and know where it's located as well of the supreme leader for
Okay.
Iran.
Okay. So we now have yet more solid confirmation from multiple sources on that. Again, even photographed, documented certification of that. So, again, on that front, wasn't abundantly clear early on in the hours after the strike happened if it had been effective in that objective of taking out Iran leadership. We now know that it has, at the very least, with the supreme leader of Iran and potentially other leadership there, though not abundantly clear on the others yet. Again, we will continue to follow that as new details on that come out. Now, Jake, of course, as you
Yes,
mentioned, in light of this recent strike on Iran, Iran, of course, has responded with retaliatory strikes of their own missile attacks of their
yes,
own on U.S. military bases across the Middle East, which includes Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, Qatar. Again, this conflict has escalated tensions across the region with Gulf nations closing airspace and widespread flight cancellations. So, again, another one of the good indicators there that this is a somewhat serious conflict. Again, flights going in and out of that region have been delayed, have been canceled. The airspace has been closed. So, certainly with the risk there, aren't any flights going on there. So, of course, going back to what our president, President Trump advised citizens of Iran, who again, I didn't ask for this conflict. Again, um, they're oftentimes, of course, they're not getting any of this information because chances are it's being suppressed. Again, roughly 4% of regular internet access. So a lot of them probably just aren't even receiving this information, maybe in the dark as to what's going on. Many of them may have been devastated just by the civilian casualties in some of these areas. But again, in terms of that, sort of as you mentioned, would be, of course, in their best interest to defect, of course, not to collaborate with the leadership there, again, to cut ties and get out if possible. But again, this is going to make it more difficult. Of course, the airspace in the area closed, understandably. It'd be a huge risk for planes to be flying in this area, but also quite tragic for Iranian citizens who are possibly trying to flee. Jake?
Yes, yes, certainly. And of course, President Trump did urge anyone in the area to get out as you mentioned. We just got some additional information about the Iranian retaliatory attacks on US military bases. It has now been reported that no American casualties resulted from the counterattacks. And we also know that there was damage to the bases, but it was very minimal. So minimal damage and no casualties reported in the counterattacks, at least for US bases. Still no report on Israel's condition after the counterattack from Iran.
Absolutely. So, just moments ago, of course, as we mentioned, Iranian retaliatory strikes on U.S. military bases. Fortunately, though, up to this point, no U.S. deaths. Again, that is according to latest reporting. So, very fortunate on that front. And again, in terms of that, from a military strategic standpoint, of course, not terribly surprising after this that, of course, Iran would attempt to do this. And furthermore, it wouldn't be terribly surprising if they would go a bit further. Of course, in recent times, we've seen a lot of conflicts between the West, again, United States, American allies, between them, and of course, Iran. Iranian proxies, again, different organizations tied to that. Many recent military conflicts, such as that. And one distinction worth noting, which again, looking into conflicts such as this, one will notice there's sort of a different regard in terms of foundations, just different backgrounds, different militaries of countries, and their own interests. Again, um, coming from the other end, of course, being distinct from the Western backgrounds, the Western values present in the United States here and across the West. Again, such is not necessarily the case with nations such as Iran, don't necessarily hold the same regard for human life. Of course, recently in conflicts, we saw, I give the example of course, the conflict between Israel and Hamas, which is widely considered a proxy of Iran. Of course, you saw bombing of different civilian areas, which usually would again be out of practice. Again, this is a military conflict. Again, usually you want to avoid harming civilians if possible, but again, that's not always the case. That's sort of the Western approach historically. But again, in terms of other parties in this isn't always necessarily the case. So, fortunately, one thing that could be very easily predicted is that after the United States takes part in the strike against Iran, that Iran would attempt to do some sort of retaliatory strikes. And again, one of the first apparent places that they would go is United States military bases. Fortunately, we were able to anticipate that. We didn't see any casualties on that front, but again, that still remains an active risk. So we'll continue to follow it, latest developments on that. And again, correct me, Jake, on this. I'm wrong. That is just a report from one of the recent retaliatory strikes from Iran on U.S. military bases. So, again, still not a whole lot of information on that, Jake.
Yes, certainly. We'll continue to provide any updates that we have on that. And I do want to give a quick update on a few different sporting events that we have, some more positive news that we have. Of course, we're also tracking some big weather and sports today that we're going to be getting into. We're going to start with some of those um, sports updates that we have. We've got a couple of big upsets that are happening right now in men's college basketball. So we just want to update you on that. Number 25 Vanderbilt is currently losing to Kentucky, who's unranked. Kentucky is currently in the lead in that game. 64 to 46 is the score with about 12 minutes left in that game. We also know that Clemson currently is leading against number 24 ranked Louisville. The current score in that game is 53 to 48 with about 12 and a half minutes left of play. So a couple of big matchups underway. In about 30 minutes, we will have the tip off of number 14 Kansas and number 2 Arizona. So that's a highly anticipated matchup. And then we also have Texas Tech ranked 16 facing off against number 4 Iowa State. So that's just kind of a quick update on a few of our basketball scores that we have.
Absolutely, yes, of course. With all of this going on, important to have something on the lighter side. So, Jake, thank you very much for the live scoring update on that. Some major sporting events now going on across the United States. And, of course, something we failed to mention at the top of this broadcast that we frequently do on broadcast. Well, if there's anything that we mention on the air that you feel a little bit in the dark about, you have any questions relating to that, and that can be on anything, that can be, of course, on the recent strike in Iran that we've been talking about, has been our top story in this edition of GWP Live. Could be about the live scoring updates that we're providing. Again, could be about the weather still to come in this broadcast. Again, anything that you might have questions about, well, we'd be glad to answer those. And the best way to do that, there are actually a few ways that you can do that. Again, the best way to do that is to call in live, 417-448-0819. Let us know what those questions are, and we'll do our best to answer them. Again, that number is 417-448-0819. You can also, if you would prefer, put those questions in the live chat, this live stream here. And again, we will do our best to answer those. Jake?
Yes, yeah, of course. Yeah, if you do put them in the live chat, I've got that pulled up, so we can go ahead and we can also answer those directly. Um, so that is something else that we will be doing throughout the live show as well. So let's see. On let's see, do we want to go ahead? Do we want let's do some more sports updates here. I've got a few more
Yes.
scores that we can go over at this point in time.
All right.
So we've got two really big matchups today with women's college basketball. So of course we looked at the men's side of things. Let's look at the women's side of things here. So it does appear that we are experiencing some technical difficulties on that front. Of course, with some of the incoming cloud cover that we have had has been playing some interference this afternoon. Even though there is some of that cloud cover, it is a very nice day. There's quite a few people out and about. So um, whenever you're not watching us doing the live stream, make sure to go out and soak in some of that sunshine today, even though there is a few clouds mixed in.
Absolutely. Great opportunity. So, Jake, my understanding, possibility of a little bit of rain today, but still, again, very nice temperatures. Some great opportunities today to go out and soak up some of that sunshine. So, of course, after you've tuned in to this, of course, heard about the strikes, about the military conflict going on, all doom and gloom, well, just step outside into that bright, beautiful sunlight. And again, a great thing to do today. You want to take that opportunity. Certainly, Jake, worth mentioning. Also, as you mentioned, again, possibility of weather interference with cloud cover, certainly interfering with satellites. So, again, possibility of technical difficulty. Again, we thank you all for continuing to bear with us and stay with us along the course of this broadcast. It is possible that that will interfere again. The weather, which we'll cover again just in a few moments. Again, if all permits, again, assuming it doesn't interfere, preventing us from covering it. Again, quite unlikely, though possible. So certainly won't rule out the possibility of it. Any other live scoring updates, Jake?
Yes. So it appears that we're having some issues with the basketball updates, but we do have some updates with some softball scores. So we'll look at that here. We've got a few really close ones right now. We've got Miami, Ohio, currently leading against Wichita State. It's 8-7. Wichita State is down to their final few outs as it's in the top of the seventh inning in that game. Let's see. We also have number 9 UCLA leading 13-6 against BYU. BYU is also down to their final outs. And then number 13, Stanford is is currently leading against Louisville 10-7. So all three of those games are in the final inning.
Absolutely. Well, we thank you again for the live scoring updates on that, Jake. And of course, we'll continue to follow those throughout the broadcast again for live updates on that. So, again, many of these games you may not have the latest scoring updates on that. Well, not to thread. Again, much of that you can find here. Again, we will do periodically on occasion that we do GWP Live, not necessarily something that we do regularly, though. If you want to receive this sort of information more regularly, you can check out GWP News Weekly. Every week it comes out on Monday nights, and some weeks, those ones with the busiest news cycles, again, major weather and sporting events, well, we'll also do a weekly recap. And again, on the weeks with these just huge major events, be it severe weather updates, as we did just earlier this winter, not long ago. Again, breaking news, again, very consequential current events. Again, many things of that nature we will even cover here on GWP Live, which of course presents a unique opportunity to call in live to have any questions that you might have. You can have those answered live on the air, and you can hear your voice, your very own voice, with that question. You can get it answered live here on GWP. So, again, I won't have all day, certainly, and this is something that we only do periodically, so you would not want to miss out on that opportunity. If you've got any questions, certainly want to call in and ask them. Again, get those answers as quickly as possible to all the burning questions that you might have. Now, the best way to reach out and do that is to call into the show, 417 488 0891. Again, that's 417 488 0891. So, again, any of those
You got the
questions.
last two
Yeah.
numbers flipped there, I believe.
Oh, yes. What is it, Jake? You can
But
correct me on that.
yes, but I believe it was 0819 if I remember correctly.
Okay, yes. 417 448 0819. Apologies for the error on that, folks. Again, at the correct number to call in live on air to have all those questions answered. And if you'd rather, again, avoid dialing the wrong number, again, the wrong number offered just moments ago, well, you can pass over all of that just by putting your questions right here in the live chat, and we'll have those answered for you in just a few moments. So, again, as things develop on the recent strike on Iran, of course, as we mentioned, something worth noting on that. Again, this somewhat resembles, again, this is also a strike on Iran, not entirely unlike what we saw earlier this year from the United States. So, again, we didn't hear a whole lot out of that after it initially happened, though, again, folks are suggesting, again, past military with expertise in this area are suggesting that it might last a little longer. Now, at the very least, the whole conflict here, the whole campaign is expected to continue for several days with ongoing military actions and heightened alert levels across the region. Now, the situation, as we mentioned, still remains fluid, still a lot going on, a lot of developments. We'll continue to cover those as they come in, with a great deal of potential for further escalation or diplomatic efforts. And of course, just as we speak, again, a likely more escalation going on. We've already seen in response to that initial strike on Iran from the United States and Israel jointly. We've seen retaliatory strikes in response. Again, Iran, again, firing missiles onto United States military bases. Of course, fortunately, we did receive a report recently from one of those U.S. military bases that was targeted after the fact. Again, received one of those retaliatory targeted missiles from Iran. Fortunately, they were able to anticipate it and, again, were prepared for that. No casualties there that were reported. So very fortunate. In fact, it's reported that there weren't any. So hopefully we continue with the same success rate. Again, quite likely that that Iran will continue to retaliate, will continue to fight back in this conflict. So hopefully, the United States has taken and will continue to take the measures to ensure that again they're protected in order to minimize casualties on that front. Jake.
Yes, and so again, as we continue to get new information in, we will make sure to continue to bring updates on that. But I believe we're now going to transition into some updates on some ongoing weather and sports that we have. And before we go into that here, I just wanted to give a very brief preview into what you can expect here on GWP as we go into the month of March.
Absolutely. So, a number of great things coming your way, as we mentioned, of course, at the start of the year. Many great new things coming from Great World Productions. Again, here, getting ready again, just in a few moments here, a preview on some things to see coming up next month in the month of March.
Uh,
So, Jake, what can the folks at home expect to see from Great World Productions in the month of March?
yes, so in the month of March, what are things that we can expect? First, just showing you those are, okay, first we're going to put these up here. Our current national weather alerts that we have. Okay, now going into what we have, what we can expect going into the month of March. All right, so we do have, so of course, we're in the middle of one of our seasons here of the Great World podcast. So, of course, that means that we've got still quite a few things that are coming down the pipeline. The first thing that we want to say is that, of course, right now we're kind of in the middle of our season. So this is like our mid-season gap that we have in releasing episodes. That will soon be coming to an end. Not this upcoming Friday, but the Friday after that will be Friday, March 13th. And we will have part two of our GWP Friday the 13th, 2026 special. And so again, you can expect that next Friday, March 13th. We will also be doing a St. Patrick's Day and March Madness special. And then we will have another episode towards the end of March as well. So we've got three new episodes coming up. We also will have a GWP What in the World episode 6 this coming Wednesday. And we will have new episodes of that every single Wednesday in the month of March. We will also be doing, of course, we always do the weekly news on Monday, so that will be staying the same. We will be releasing GWP Words of Scripture every single Thursday night in the month of March. And we will also have weekly recaps. We will not have a weekly recap the next couple of Fridays, partially because of that Friday the 13th special, but we will. The GWP weekly recap will return on Friday, March 20th and Friday, March 27th towards the end of the month. And then we will also have a GWP preview for some of those upcoming episodes very soon. In fact, next Tuesday, we will be previewing that Friday the 13th episode. So, a lot of things in store during the month of March. In total, I believe we are going to be releasing about 20 to 25 new videos during the
Absolutely.
month of March. So it's a very big month for us here on the Great World Podcast,
Yes.
or Great
20.
World Productions, rather.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, 20 to 25 new videos coming just in the month of March. And again, that accounts for our routine videos. So, again, that doesn't even take into account, again, the possible occasional things that we may do, such as this, such as GWP Live. So, again, not to fret, rest assured, folks, there will be plenty, no shortage of excitement coming your way from Great World Productions in the coming month, and for that matter, all throughout the year from Great World Productions. And again, for those who might have been concerned, again, about the gap you mentioned, Jake, a bit of a programming gap on that, but again, not to fret on that. We haven't neglected, of course, our longtime viewers, listeners will know that our very first venture here was the Great World Podcast. And no, not to fret, we've taken a little bit of a gap. We have not neglected it. Of course, the Great World Podcast will be back before long, back and better than ever. And so you won't want to miss out on that. And again, of course, coming back with part two of our Friday the 13th special. And again, on a day like Friday the 13th, again, it's just amazing that we were able to get it done and able to get it up online without encountering anything too crazy. I mean, we did encounter a few crazy things again, but again, nothing too crazy for our standards. Again, so to find out exactly what happens on Friday the 13th, again, you want to stay tuned for that coming your way on the Great World Podcast. Again, just one of the many offerings from Great World Productions. And of course, Jake, you mentioned one of our brand new series. If you haven't checked it out, folks, you are missing out. GWP What in the World. Now, if you're not familiar with it, our new series, GWP What in the World, well, each edition we answer, well, somewhat random questions. Again, we do have dedicated topics for a given series, and we have a set of questions for each episode that we'll address. And the thing about ones that we've taped up to this point, again, many of the ones, again, in the foreseeable future, the next few episodes of GWP What in the World will be coming out. Well, again, those are questions. The interesting thing about that, we're responding those extemporaneously, totally off the cuff for the first time. So again, you get to see our live thought process. Again, isn't always pretty and not always a lot going on up there, but certainly a lot of great things. And again, you get to see that. So many burning questions again down the line as we expand that with things like not unlike our GWP question of the week, which we've been doing now and again on GWP News Weekly. Well, similarly, down the line, future episodes of GWP What in the World, where again the focus is answering questions. Well, again, we'll take questions from viewers and listeners, and you can send those to us. You can submit them in the very same way. Now, again, we just ask if you submit those. Again, we've got many different things. If your, of course, question you submit might be in reference to something we've covered today, might be in reference to something on a newscast. So on that front, it'll be important, again, in your message, in your correspondence, if you give us a call, just be sure to let us know again, what exactly your question is in reference to, or again, what you'd like it to be used for. So if you want to contribute to our new series, GWP What in the World, again, if you got a question on something we've covered today, right here on GWP Live, again, we'd be happy to answer it. But again, just let us know your preference on that. Again, if you'd like to reach out, certainly a great opportunity to do that. So you don't want to miss out on that opportunity. Another new series, Jake, as you mentioned, GWP Words of Scripture, of course, as it sounds. Again, a really short series. We just go through a short passage of Scripture. We sort of analyze it, Jake and I, and again, provide that. So certainly a great resource again. So many of those, and again, many of those certain passages may have difficulty understanding. Well, we'll give our understanding for what it's worth. So certainly we'll want to stay tuned for that coming down the line. Jake?
Yes. And so, yeah, we are still experiencing some technical difficulties. So you have cut out just a couple of times on my end, but I believe that if I was hearing correctly, you were talking about our newest series, What in the World, and GWP What in the World and GWP Words of Scripture. And just a quick note on both of those. Both of those series will occur every single Wednesday and Thursday night during the season, during the GWP season. And so you might be wondering, what is a GWP season? A GWP season is basically when we're in the middle of releasing episodes from a season of the Great World Podcast. So I guess, for example, when season 5 premiered in late January, that was the beginning of our winter slash spring GWP season. And then the end of it will occur when the GWP season 5 finale is released in April. And so that would be season. There will be a period in May and June in between season and 5 and 6. That will be the off season, if you want to call it. And there will not be Wednesday or Thursday videos released for What in the World and Words of Scripture during the month of May and June, because that is considered in the off season. So just kind of a quick note on how that works for both of those series.
Absolutely. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. And Jake, just a little bit of clarification on that. You mentioned with a couple of our news series, of course, GWP What in the World, GWP Words of Scripture, you said on Wednesdays and Thursdays. I assume Wednesdays and Thursdays respectively. So that would mean GWP What in the World comes out on Wednesdays, GWP Words of Scripture comes out on Thursdays. Am I correct in that?
Yes, so that is the correct timeline of that. And I guess I'll just go ahead and kind of give you a preview even into the month of April, just to have an idea of how long those are going to be released. GWP What in the World will be released every Wednesday through April 1st, and then GWP Words of Scripture will be released through April 2nd. After April 1st and April 2nd, we will be done with the season 5 round of those videos, if that makes any sense.
Yes, absolutely. So, interestingly, our again present series of GWP What in the World will conclude on April 1st, April Fool's Day. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens there again. Not to say, certainly, I've had no shortage of mishaps here. So, hopefully, we'll be able to get through all of that all right. And again, you'll have to stay tuned to see exactly what happens. And again, if you want to make sure that we're there, and again,
Yes. And then we also kind of to go along with that order, we also have a GWP short film that will be released during the same week of our season finale. So that's kind of another rule that we have here on our scheduling, just so you can anticipate when the next GWP short film will be released.
absolutely. So certainly worth covering on that front. And Jake, we look into this more in depth, and of course, kind of a reflection at the end of the past year, the end of 2025. And what the heck's Alexa doing on my screen? I did not say anything remotely close to Alexa. I don't know why. Oh my gosh. Well, I guess I did say at that time. Keeps coming up on my screen. Hopefully, the folks at home will understand this. But again, apologies for the interruption there. But again, certainly you'll have to tune in to, of course, our more in-depth reflections on this, on some of the many offerings, and again, some of the things coming this year. Of course, we reflected at the end of the year 2025. Of course, in our New Year's special, the episode after that, we gave an entire episode dedicated to things again coming up in the new year, in particular from Great World Productions. And again, Jake, I don't know about you, it's just sort of amazing to think that it's been in this relatively short amount of time from starting out just with the again the Great World podcasts and expanding into doing different things like our short films, our newscasts, just amazing. And it's sort of again hard to believe that again in the coming year we'll be coming out with our third short film. So again, we've already done two somehow, and amazingly, I just again have been very impressed with the reception of those. In particular, our last short film, which if you've missed out on that, you don't want to miss out on it. Again, was very well received. Again, one of our initial post, one of our initial offerings, one of the first things to really garner international interest. So you'll have to check that out again if you haven't. That is our most recent short film, The Darkened Quest. Of course, our first one, again, being Guardians. So get this one coming here in the year ahead in just a month or so. That will be our third short film, so you'll want to stay tuned for that. And again, hopefully, you'll seem to enjoy our past short film. So again, we hope to provide more of the same on that. Jake?
Yes, and just something to note, of course, if you are just now tuning in, we are updating you on some breaking news, weather, and sports. Of course, earlier in this live stream, we covered some of the new updates on the US and Israel attack on Iran and some of the counterattacks from Iran. So we started off with covering some of that. We've also been giving some sports updates kind of throughout the live stream. And Before too long here, we will also give some update on some weather as well. But it is now the top of the hour here. It is 21 o'clock on February 28th. That's 3 o'clock local time here in the Central Time Zone, so 3 p.m. And it appears that we have some sirens behind me as well. So somebody not enjoying the afternoon. Hopefully everything is good with that. So, and then we are experiencing some technical difficulties as well with some internet issues as well. So bear with us as we continue to go through the remainder of this live stream. But it is 3 p.m.
Yes, absolutely, Jake. As you mentioned, slight bit of delay coming from your end there. Again, breaking out periodically. Again, somehow did not hear the sirens in the background, but it appears that you're coming through now fairly loud and clear. So hopefully the folks at home can hear all right. Again, if you're having issues with that, well, that's another great place to go to the live chat. Again, if you're having any problems hearing us, let us know and let us know how we sound. It can give us any feedback possible, whatever we can do to improve our sound, our quality, so you can hear us better. Well, we'll certainly do what we can. And again, we're just getting on to, as we mentioned, interestingly, just as things started to, again, possibly delay a little bit with the internet. Again, we mentioned possibly related to the weather a bit, just as we were getting into the weather. So I reckon we better get a move on with that. Rather, before we get cut out entirely, Jake, what should we know about the again the
Yes,
weather
and we may
heads, things
also
to come?
be
Yes.
interrupted. Sorry about that. You cut out there for a moment there once again. And something else to note here is that there is a very good possibility that within the next 10 or so minutes that I leave without warning, as we do have some rain that is close by. So in the event that it does start raining, move to uh, I would have to move indoors, and so that would cause a temporary interruption. So just kind of bear with us as there is the possibility that that might happen in the near future.
Absolutely. So again, quite possible in a few moments that we'll see rain starting a little bit. So you have to bear with us. Of course, Jake Bulmer here, as you can see, for the folks who are viewing, is outside currently. So that'd be no bueno. Again, want to get again water doesn't mix well with electronics. So again, we'll have to move inside in the case that rain starts anytime soon. So we'll experience a temporary interruption for that, but again, not to fret, just moving inside very briefly and should be back momentarily. So, Jake, in terms of the weather, in terms of what's coming our way, what to expect, what can we expect coming ahead in the week ahead?
Let's see. I believe the question was, what can we expect in the upcoming weekend with weather? I think it was something to that effect, from what I could understand.
Yes, apologies, I must have cut out a bit. Yes, that is what I asked, Jake. If you can hear me now.
Yes, now I can, now it's coming through pretty clearly. Okay. So we'll go ahead and we'll start by looking at some of our national alerts. But we've had this pulled up for quite a while. This is from the National Weather Service, and we do have some winter weather advisories that have now been issued across northern Kansas and northern Missouri. So this is from some of that wintry weather that we're expecting going into tomorrow night. We've also got some winter weather advisories from Minnesota stretching into Wisconsin, part of northern Iowa as well. And so that is from some snow that we're experiencing today. Other than that, though, you'll notice we really don't have a whole lot in the way of weather alerts aside from this red flag warning here in Colorado, Nebraska, and Wyoming. And it appears that we may have some severe thunderstorm warnings according to this as well. And looks like here in southeastern Florida, we're dealing with some severe weather as well. So some severe thunderstorms across that region. All right, so let's look at our current radar. This is from the National Weather Service, showing us that current radar picture. And so again, here's some of those light showers that I was mentioning that are passing through the area. I felt a few sprinkles out here in Columbia, but the majority of this is still not reaching the ground. at least based on from my observations. And then we have had some heavier precipitation across the Joplin area at this point in time, Pittsburgh as well. So a few rumbles of thunder, some heavier rain is going to be possible, but it doesn't look like it's going to be a pretty big deal. And then um, while there is rain across this area, although you can't see it, there have been some thunderstorms just off the coast of Florida. So that's where we could have some more in the way of severe weather, but at least not a whole lot of severe weather here, or really not any severe weather at all here in the state of Missouri at this point in time. So as we look at that future, of course, we're dealing with a big cold front that's going to come through tonight. So these nice 60-degree temperatures that we have today, that's going to go bye-bye as we go into tomorrow, as we do have that system that's going to bring in some. So again, today we're dealing with the snow here across Minnesota and Wisconsin, across the Great Lakes. But as we go into tomorrow, we will start off with rain during the afternoon hours in Kansas and Missouri. The late evening is when this rain will begin. And then you'll notice across northern Kansas and Missouri, where we have those winter weather advisories that we showed you, that's where we could switch over to freezing rain, sleet, snow, or a mixture of all three of those.
Yeah, so certainly the possibility in that region, freezing rain, sleet, snow, mixture of those different things. So wintry mix possible in that region, Jake, as you mentioned. And now, of course, as you'll recognize, graphic now on your screens. We've been following, of course, throughout certainly the winter, the snowfall levels across Missouri and our primary listening areas, of course, here in Nevada, Missouri, and where you are, Jake, in Columbia, Missouri. Some of the different snowfall levels, and as you mentioned, Jake, it's possible that we'll get a little more. So, in terms of what we've received in the past in relation to what's predicted, what we're expecting. Bring us up to speed on what things are looking like there.
So yesterday in the weekly recap, we mentioned that there was the possibility of a little bit of accumulation here in Columbia, but there was not expected to be accumulation south of Interstate 70. That was the update yesterday. That rain snow line has moved just a little bit further towards the north. It does not look like the temperatures are going to fall back into the upper 20s Sunday night, which is what we originally thought. And so that is part of the reason why our snowfall totals have dropped just a little bit. Of course, I did mention yesterday that there was a possibility that this was going to happen. Um, and so here's that snowfall forecast for Sunday afternoon and evening. At this point in time, around Boone County here in Columbia, it looks like that we could be looking at a dusting, possibly upwards of an inch of snow around Interstate 70. But if you're south of Interstate 70, it looks like we're mainly going to be looking at rain out of this storm system.
Absolutely. So, not a great deal of possibility for snow as we initially thought. That there was more of a possibility. Again, thought it was going to get a bit cooler. Again, back down into the 20s. Again, now it's looking less likely. So, again, much less likely that we'll have snow. Again, rain and precipitation certainly still possible, but again, snow unlikely. Just again, not having the conditions to make for it, to allow for it in terms of temperature and whatnot. Jake?
Yes, and so again, it is possible really that this area doesn't see any accumulation at all. So that's also another really big possibility. So keep that in mind. In fact, around Columbia and really just points south, I would say there's a possibility that we see about a dusting, but I would say it's likely that we would be closer to nothing than closer to an inch. So just keep that in mind on our snowfall. As far as our ice forecast, let's look at that. There is the possibility that we could mix in with a little bit of sleet, maybe even some freezing rain if temperatures drop below 32. And so with that, there is a possibility around Kansas City stretching to Columbia, a light glaze of ice is going to be possible tomorrow evening, particularly after about 7 or 8 p.m. Now, and something else to mention is north of our viewing area, so to speak, we could be experiencing upwards of 1 to 2 inches of snow and a little bit heavier when it comes to those ice accumulations. But at least here in Columbia, we're expecting a dusting to maybe an inch of accumulation with snow. And then as far as ice goes, a light glaze is going to be possible.
Absolutely. So again, the most we expect in terms of ice, certainly there in Colombia, as you mentioned, Jake, is just a light glaze. So again, not terribly severe. Again, sort of on its way out. Much of this winter weather. So again, not too terribly concerning in terms of road conditions and different things like that. Again, it's possible, but exceedingly unlikely that there will be major severe conditions there that really impact road conditions. Jake?
Yeah, so not a whole lot of impacts on roadways because temperatures are so warm today. That means it's going to take a lot longer for those road temperatures to drop below freezing. So I really doubt we'll have any accumulations on roadways. A few slippery spots are going to be possible for the Monday morning commute and Sunday evening for those traveling during the storm. Now, we do want to kind of shift our attention towards um, towards what is we're going to be experiencing as we go into next week, as we are expecting some heavier amounts of rainfall as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday. This is from the Tropical Tidbits GFS Saturday morning model run that is showing us some of that heavier rainfall across the state of Missouri that we're expecting as we go into Wednesday. Additional chances for rain, maybe even some thunderstorms as we go into Friday. So we are going into a more active pattern. So that is something that we need to watch. So of course, the next really over the next couple of days here, the next 48 hours, we're watching that chance for some wintry weather. But beyond that, the focus is going to shift more towards rain and flooding across the state of Missouri as we go into next week. As far as how much rainfall we could be experiencing, I think pretty much everywhere we're going to see at least an inch of accumulation. This is going all the way through Friday and Saturday of next week. As far as really what we're expecting across southern Missouri, around 2 to 4, maybe even upwards of 5 to 6 inches are going to be possible. So some very heavy rainfall. We could even be looking at a little bit of flooding, especially as we go towards the end of next week.
Absolutely. So across the state of Missouri, Jake, you mentioned certainly precipitation expected. Again, in terms of rain, flooding, and such. Again, likely, of course, more than an inch. Again, sort of zooming in on our particular area of Missouri, you mentioned likely closer to 2 to 4 inches. Even you said 2 to 4 or 6 to 8, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's possible a few isolated areas see that, but here is what we're forecasting for the different cities that we forecast here for. We've got Columbia, where I'm thinking about 2 to 4 inches of rain in the next 7 days, and then about 3 to 5 inches here across Nevada. Isolated higher amounts are going to be possible. And also, just kind of a quick side note on this. This is the first time that we've actually used this particular graphic here, and so I will be making some additional changes to it, adding some additional information. So, but you'll notice that we do have that yearly total for the year of 2026. We also have the yearly average, but we will be adding some additional information to this in the coming weeks. But I just wanted to kind of give you almost a bit of a preview of what you can expect from this as we go throughout the year. It'll look something like this for rain and then something like this each season for snow.
Absolutely. Of course, many of the folks who tuned in for our severe winter weather updates this past season will recognize that graphic for snowfall totals. So, again, doing a similar thing now with rainfall totals. Again, just a brand new graphic on that front. First time seeing it. Again, just another great offering. And again, for more these, again, news, weather, sports updates, all that and much more each week. You can tune in to GWP News Weekly again, something you won't want to miss out on. Great way to start your week off each Monday. Again, find out all the latest information, what to expect, of course, from news, weather, sports, getting the latest scores on those events, and all the rest. So you wouldn't want to miss out on that, Jake.
Yes, and so the last thing that we will be looking at, of course, we did mention that there is some rain that's ongoing. We do also have that risk for some severe weather as we go forward in time, at least not for today in the state of Missouri. But again, as we did mention, there is a marginal threat across the state of Florida. This is from the SPC's day one severe weather outlook. We'll go into tomorrow. We've got that risk for some thunderstorms here across the state of Missouri. Um, and well, what it should be showing is the same thing for day three. Basically, what our point is that we have multiple days of thunderstorms in the forecast. So this would be for your Monday, again, showing that we are highlighted in that lighter shade of green. And so again, this is technically not a severe weather risk. This is just showing non-severe thunderstorms, but it does show that we are going to be in a more active pattern. This is now for I believe this is for Wednesday. Yes, this is our Wednesday severe weather outlook. There has been an area highlighted across Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas. Based on what it does shift a little bit to the north. And so if that happens here in the state of Missouri, we could be experiencing thunderstorms as we go into Wednesday. And
Absolutely.
I
And
am no longer in the video, am I?
well, actually, Jake, certainly on my end, we can still see you again. So that means that likely the folks at home can still see you as well. Though there was a little bit of a delay in that, what you were just saying moments ago, something about Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, something shifting over again. So a bit of a reiteration of that would be beneficial. Again, it did come through again, the bits and pieces, though it was delayed, a little bit of a glitch there. So again, a reiteration. What exactly you said there would be great to know, Jake.
Yes.
Absolutely. And Jake, of course, as I mentioned, not sure if I might have cut out at that point. It appears that we may be having some technical difficulties at the moment. Of course, as we mentioned throughout this broadcast, and we thank you all at home for your patience. Again, as we address these technical difficulties, again, experiencing um, these things. Again, a very new thing, not something that we do all that frequently is live streams of this sort. So unfortunately, we may encounter difficulties of this sort on occasion, and it complicates those things just a little bit more whenever we have different weather conditions in that equation. And again, that is a possibility here. A little bit of cloud cover, of course, as we've mentioned. Those viewing will notice that I am not joined by co host Jacob Bulmer here in the studio. Again, he joins me here live by satellite. And again, something that can interfere with that is cloud cover, which we are dealing a little bit with. And I understand that the weather and different things, again, a bit of a slow internet connection today for whatever reason. Certainly, Jake, on your end. So again, just a few difficulties on that front. We thank you all again for your patience. And again, if there are any huge issues, let us know in the live chat below. So Jake, if you've been able to work any of those things out, I know just moments ago we were looking at a map. You mentioned something about Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, something shifting over. Again, do you recall exactly what you were saying there? Is sort of just trying to address technical difficulties now, it would appear. Well, yes, we thank you.
Yes, yes, I believe. Yes, and I believe we have hit the end of what we planned on covering in today's live stream. So I believe that we are going to wrap things up for today.
Absolutely. Well, I reckon the universe wouldn't allow us too much longer. Of course, suddenly we're having all these technical difficulties, so that may be a message of sorts. We ought to tie things up for today. Well, of course, that's all for now on GWP Live, though you can still check out more on our channel across YouTube, across our different platforms. Though, again, we thank you for tuning in to this edition of GWP Live. Until next time,
I'm Jacob Fulmer.
And I'm your host, Isaac Hedges. From all of us at GWP Live and Great World Productions, good night and God bless.